in today's episode of the Accessible Astrology Podcast.
I could sell this all day long because it has changed my life. And what I think is the most important thing to walk away is it provides you awareness so that you can have a choice. We are all going through this. There is a lesson to be learned. What are we going to do about it? What are you going through in your life? Are you feeling empowered, or are you feeling like, why me? Why is this happening to me? But when you have the validation that there are other people also going through it at the same time or around the same time, you're just like, okay, I can see this for a totally different reason with a different perspective. And now I can have responsibility, the ability to respond, because we know with every sign, there is a high octave, there is a low octave. And am I going to take the high octave or the low one? Because I've been operating a lot of my life at the low octave. And now that I have this awareness, this is empowering. Now I can do something about it. Now I see this transit or this cycle as a challenge that I can rise above, that I can meet it and feel like I am having an evolution of the soul. And I want that for all of my rising sign members. So if you are on the fence, by all means, come on in, because the minute you talk to your rising sign group, a light bulb is going to come on and you're going to feel at home. I trust and believe you will feel at home.
Welcome to the Accessible Astrology Podcast, where we make astrology digestible and understandable. A podcast where we learn about the rising sign method, a method that I discovered and created over the course of 15 plus years working with clients and groups. Here, it's all about learning to be the person that you truly are instead of the person you think you're supposed to be. I am Eugenia Krok, and in today's episode, I'm going to review the top 3 reasons that astrology is not woo. My guest, Katie, was overwhelmed by astrology, but once she discovered Accessible Astrology and further the Rising Sign Method courses and groups, Katie not only could understand astrology in a way that made sense, but she also connected with a tribe of people who helped her understand her and felt more validated than she'd ever felt before. She's going to tell us why and how she got there and how you can too. But first, let's talk about the top 3 reasons that astrology is not woo. Now, this is a topic near and dear to my heart because for over 15 years, when people ask me, what do you do? I say, I'm an astrologer, because that's what I do. And the amount of times people respond to me and say, oh, I love the woo. If I hear it one more time. So in today's episode, I want to go through my top 3 reasons why I do not in any way, shape, size, or form believe that astrology is woo. Number 1, astrology is rooted in scientific observation. Astrology is based on the tracking and study of celestial bodies. It's something that we can measure. For as long as we know about human history, humans have looked up to the sky. They've asked questions and they've received answers. For example, is fall coming? They look to the sky to see the answer. Now we know, and I talk about this in my core curriculum that you can find in the classroom, I go through the history of astrology and the history of the psychology and the neurology of astrology. But it was when we really started to track the sun and the moon is when we moved into the age of agriculture. Once we realized that we could take a seed and cultivate that seed based on the movement of the sun and the moon, etc., from our perspective on Earth, this movement of cultivating seeds to create agriculture changed humanity as we know it. Since then, we continue to use astronomy and astronomical movement to see what's coming next. We know when eclipses are coming because of scientific study. We know that the moon is going to be full because we watch the moon every night change and shape form. We know we're moving into fall and winter because the sun starts going down on the horizon and we start having shorter days. We know we're moving into spring when the sun starts to rise in the sky from our perspective and we start to have longer days. There are full scientific studies, such as NASA, that use all of their resources and government funding to study this very thing. So astrology is based on astronomical celestial bodies moving in the sky. This is observable scientific fact. And once these patterns are studied, This proves that astrology is grounded, measurable, and in physical reality, not mysticism. Number two, nature has an impact on your neurons. Throughout my studies and all of my life, which led me down the road to get a master's degree in psychotherapy and counseling, it was always taught to us in school that the first few months of a human's life are the most important. We now call this the fourth trimester. That time when a child comes into this world and takes in everything they can as their senses begin to develop. Every little detail that infant takes in starts to create a web of neurons in their mind, a circuit, so to speak, of how that brain will perceive reality. So every single scientist will tell you, what's the mother like? What's the father like? What was the environment like? Did you get milk? Did you not get milk? They say across the boards in neurology, psychology, psychotherapy, you name it, that those first few months are the most important. So could it be that the environment that the child is born into, whether it be the middle of summer or the middle of winter, might have an impact on the neurons of that child? Yes, of course. That is astrology. We're looking at what was literally going on planet Earth as a response to the movement of the sun and the moon and how that impacts the Earth around us. I was born in the middle of winter. My first 3 months on life were different than someone born in the middle of summer. And my second reason that astrology is not woo, because our brain is constantly responding to the environment around us. The environment around us is constantly responding to the sun in the sky. Winter, summer, fall, you name it. My approach to astrology, the accessible astrology approach, and the rising sign method approach is also rooted in data. And that brings me to point number 3. When I began my journey as an astrologer over 15 years ago, I didn't want to just read the book and listen to what it said. I would read things like Leos are actors on the stage, and I would meet Leos, and that would not be my experience. Or your rising sign is how you look, and that is definitely not been my experience. And so 15 years ago, I started tracking and collecting data with my clients and in my research. According to my calculations, I have studied hundreds of thousands of charts in the last 15 years. I've worked with at least 3,000 clients. I've had at least 500 participants in my group studies and support groups. I've also taught tens of thousands of students. And throughout those years, I have discovered that there are 12 distinctive personalities based on the rising sign. And this has not just been a hypothetical. This has not just been something I read from some book or watched on some YouTube. This is from talking to, researching, and studying all of these people the last 15 years. And in my research and in my data collection, I have a strong hypothesis, theory, and I believe fact-based approach to astrology that is not based in woo, that is based in research, data, science. And those are just my top 3 reasons that I believe astrology is not woo. One of my missions here is to create an environment that we teach people about this, where we take astrology out of the world of woo and we add it into the world of science, because that is the religion people most respect at this time in history. If we keep using language in astrology like Leos are actors on the stage and generic things like that, no one will ever take this field seriously. This field is actually something that is professional, that is based in science, which is based in observation, based on physical reality. Unlike many practices in woo, which are intuited and interpreted and felt into and psychically received, that's not astrology. When I sit down to look at an astrology chart, I am not psychically taking in information. I'm looking at data. I'm looking at when this person is born. Is it winter, summer, fall? I want to look at what time in the socioeconomic history was this person born. I want to see all of the stories that were happening around this child that created their neurons, that created their approach to life. I want to look at their rising sign, which I've researched for over 15 years, which will tell me about the conditioning that came from the family and therefore why you move into the work you do and the relationships you do. This is a very different approach to astrology, and it is not woo. Right now, you can access our online community completely free. You can access from your desktop or from an app on your phone. In our free community, I post daily updates about astrology. I go live with you every week for about 2 hours on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I offer insights on current events, discuss larger planetary cycles, and throughout this, I take your questions. In this free community, you also have an opportunity to connect with the hundreds of other individuals who have joined our free community and who are having beneficial conversations and insights from all of the material that we offer you absolutely for free. In addition to the interactions, we have a classroom with free and paid courses. There you can access the Rising Sign Method course material. This is the foundations of the Rising Sign Method. We also offer the core curriculum course material, which is the foundations of astrology. So with the core curriculum and the rising sign method, you can move into your specific rising sign method course, which goes into exactly the conditioning that was laid out for you based on your chart and based on over 15 years of research to learn about who you are and why you are the way you are. Soon, we'll be opening up our rising sign groups. If you want to join us for this limited time opportunity that is coming soon, you've got to be in our community first, because that's where the announcements will come out first. It's very exciting to have these groups start again. I'm so excited to open up the doors once again to those of you 12 rising signs to your group so you can get to know one another. You can learn about who you are and you can get gotten. So if you're ready to take your astrological journey to another level through our community interactions, our live events, our huge classroom of tons of education, and an opportunity to join your group of individuals who share your same rising sign, go ahead and jump into our community for free. Hello, Katie, and welcome to the Accessible Astrology Podcast. I'm so grateful you have decided to come on as a guest to discuss your experience in the rising sign groups. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I am so excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
I love the rising sign groups. Excited to get into it.
Let's start with this. Where were you before these groups? Where were you in terms of mental, spiritual, emotional health, but also where were you on your journey of astrology and what was going on for you when you found these groups?
Yeah, astrology has always been an interest of mine. I've always dabbled in it very lightly, read about my sun sign. That's all I knew back then. And where I really found you and your podcast was at the tail end of my Saturn return. I was having a life crisis and doing all the spiritual things. I started going to yoga and then I did a yoga teacher training. And so I was dabbling in a lot of things. And then I found your podcast. So then I started to listen and I really liked your delivery. I love how you're very to the point. You don't sugarcoat things. I love that about you because astrology can be so overwhelming for somebody that is a beginner. There's so many places you can get stuck in the weeds. So I really appreciated that you distilled it down to something digestible, something people can relate to and make connections. I think that's what got me to be a longtime listener was that it was accessible. It was accessible astrology. And so that's what got me interested. I felt like it was connecting some dots where I was lost in that Saturn return. So it was a lifesaver and just that emotional support of this is why these things might be happening. And here's the silver lining in it.
Oh, I love that. I love how you said in the weeds. That's a really good description. When people start getting into astrology, they get in the weeds really fast.
Yes. With the aspects and the quincunxes, and it's just, whoa, stop right there because I'm lost.
That's exactly what I say all the time. Don't go too far too fast. Let's back this up. Let's start with real basics. I think that's what I try to convey in these groups and in the coursework is you learn a lot in your chart with looking at nothing in it. You can learn incredible amounts of information.
Yes. And your foundations course really set the stage for me to understand not only my chart in particular, but also the flavors of the modalities, the elements, the signs. It really helped me understand what is the essence of it and how can I apply it to A, my life, and B, what's happening around me.
Nice. The core curriculum.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I've gotten good feedback on that. That's great. So let's go ahead and talk about the rising sign groups. We're going to be candid here. We're in the same Gemini rising group, Katie and I. So we've had those connections. So what has it been like for you having the Gemini rising group? Like what has been the biggest change in your life or your perspective since being in those groups?
Everything. It's been literally a godsend. It's been
Mm,
everything at once. Have somebody that gets you at a core level because they understand your quirks, your tendencies, your approach to life, and just how you see the world. I think we all give each other grace because we understand it. And so we live it. And so we're very relatable in that sense where I understand what you're going through because the flavor of my second house is the same,
mhm.
or my seventh house, especially the angular houses, huge. And just to know of, wow, we are set up with the same blueprint and therefore we have an understanding with each other. So when I'm talking to my Gemini risings, to be specific about our rising sign, we get each other at a core level from the very beginning, even before we speak. And so that is so refreshing and also relieving to know if I can drop my guard down and I can just speak freely because they're not judging me, because I don't want to say they are me, but we are very similar. And so it's freeing, very freeing.
Mm. And I think you nailed it too. There's not judgment. That's not
No
this.
judgment.
This is not these groups. Yeah.
No,
Right. And
no.
I'm glad you bring that up because being somebody who actually goes into all the groups, I do find that I naturally find myself more judgmental in other groups, oddly enough, because I'm like, what are you guys talking about? What? This is how your marriages look like? That makes no sense to me, or whatever, right? It is in our own groups. It's, oh, whoa. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm getting judged. And I'm literally not judging anybody here. It's really bizarre.
And with the way that our charts are set up, elements and modalities, we just have different motivations, and that's
Yes.
totally okay. So I
Mhm.
think that takes the pressure off things. And so you can actually have more grace, not only for yourself and your fellow rising members, but also for the other rising signs to be like, I don't get you, but I can understand the flavor of how you operate. So that's been huge, especially for
Mhm.
close people in your life, or even just people that you do know their rising sign, and you can honestly have an understanding.
Yeah, exactly. It's you recognize that you've judged it or something, but now
Mm-hmm.
you're like, no, I don't actually need to judge it because that's your path, boo. You do you. This is
Totally.
mine. It's all
Yep.
good. Like I don't get it and I don't have any idea how that works for you, but I know you don't get mine either and you don't understand how it works for me, but it works. And and then when you're in your group together, you can feel that okay, we work this way, we move this way. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
What has been huge for me, and I'll go back to the angular houses of like how we do relationships. And so stopping yourself from comparing of how other rising signs do relationships, very liberating,
Yes.
because if I were to compare, I would punish myself forever. And so just to know that our rising sign does relationships this way, does work this way, it's, oh, okay, got it. That's the assignment. Done.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and recognizing, "Oh, so I am in the right partnership. This actually totally fits what I'm supposed to be
Yes.
doing." Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Because
absolutely.
when I compare it with my other rising signs, it's like, oh, on track, right on time.
Huge, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is one area of the chart or just of the experience with these groups that has shocked you the most or been the most like aha revelating? I know you mentioned the seventh and relationships, but is there any other area that you've been more like surprised by and in awe of in these groups?
I could easily say career, but I think what actually has been more surprising to me is the second house of values and how we make
Mm,
money. And to know the element and the modality of that is
mm,
of, oh, okay. Speaking from a Gemini rising perspective, we have Cancer there. So there's this emotional component that's
mm,
huge. And to
mm,
recognize that and have the awareness turned on that is, wow, okay. So do I do have that flavor of that house, and I can
mhm,
recognize that of how my
mhm,
life has played out thus far up until now.
mhm,
And now that I have the awareness, I can do something about it.
mhm. And then talking to other members in the group, has that given you extra insight and validation for it?
Yes, absolutely. Noticing how they can notice the ebbs and flows, especially if we're talking about water, noticing those emotional ebbs and flows and just recognizing of like how they have mastered it or at least how they're working with it. And so that's giving me assurance that I can eventually learn how this works and feel like I can be in a flow state.
Mm.
Totally.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. I go through, in fact, I'm going to be doing more course material for the Rising Sign Method course, where I'm going to actually be going through the triangulation of houses as well. And if you can understand the second, then you can understand the triangulation of that in the chart as a whole as well. You open up one house and then it just opens up a bunch of other houses and it just starts to flow and you can understand that process. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds
Yeah.
like that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also been huge with your method of looking at the polarities,
Mm,
noticing what's in the second house, what sign, what element, and then looking to the opposite polarity of things. And that really shines a light on some of those challenges or some of those lessons that you're going to have to overcome. So that's been
mhm.
huge too.
Yeah, and almost like the natural balancing impact of it and how it affects the polar expression of the thing and working with those polarities. I love that.
Yeah.
I just have to share. I think I just have to. I'm going to say a quick thing about the Gemini Rising group. For me, I think the biggest one that's been life changing for me was the fourth. That was when we all had those experience, like being able to talk to other people about the fourth house. It made such an unconscious part of my life so conscious. I honestly, I've been doing this 15 years. I've known about my fourth house all those years, and when we got into it together, I was like, whoa, I can see myself in a way that I've never been able to see myself before. But I also felt the third house was pretty and continues to be very whoa for our group, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Right now, we are particularly going through a season, and it's been so nice to validate each other and also give
Mhm.
words of encouragement because we're literally going through the same thing. And one of our fellow members, she reached out to me just to give me like a little boost and words of support. And it just came at the right time
Mm.
because I'm about to go through something that she will go through pretty soon and you already have gone through.
Mhm.
And so it's this mutual circle of support. And it's just, if I did not have that, I would feel alone. I don't know what I would do. I think I would feel, what was me? Why is this happening? But to know that this is a theme and clearly there is a lesson here. So I'm looking at it totally with a different
Mhm.
perspective.
Mhm.
And that's been so critical as we're going through these transits. We're thinking about what is that third house or any of the houses and just noticing of we are in this together.
Yeah. It's pretty shocking, isn't it? You're like, "Wait, you're
Yes.
literally going through this right now." Yeah, I'm literally going you're like, "How is this
Yes.
even possible?" Say it's amazing, isn't it? That part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about your actual connection. You talked about someone reaching out to you. How has that been, the connection with the other members of the group? And what has that done in your world, in your life, the actual connection to the members?
Um, it's been huge because I feel like we all have close best friends over years of time. but I have not shared certain things that I have shared with my rising sign group members. And just the sheer depth that I can go, because as I said, on a cellular level, that they get me and I get them, and things are happening at the same time. Or even if it's not, because I did speak with another rising sign member where this particular event is not happening to them, but it actually
Mm,
happened years ago. Same
mm,
flavor, same kind of
mm.
dynamics. And they had to think back and they were like, oh, wait, that actually did happen, and gave me some words of encouragement. So I was just like, wow. Then it just makes you think of how the universe operates on a larger scale, like time. It's not linear. And the vulnerability that I have shared with these rising sign group members has been huge. And even some of the new members where, you know, some of the older ones we've known and grown with each other, and we've formed relationships outside of the groups, and it's been great to get those messages. But even the new members where they're sharing vulnerable things, and it's, whoa, like you're saying something new that none of us ever spoke about, and you're hitting home on something that has been integral to me or that I've been struggling with, and now you're bringing attention to it, and it's like validation and just a new connection that I don't have with any other members, but I have with this one now. And so
Mhm,
it's been
mhm.
really special.
Mm. Yeah, and it's been really interesting in these conversations looking at it. I've been blown away doing these interviews because I've had so many different walks of life. I don't think I realized how diverse this entire community was really until these interviews. You got people from like totally different cultures, totally different generations, different genders, different. You've got this myriad of people, and it seems that the path remains universal for each group. It like doesn't like where you grow up, what your ethnic background or socioeconomic status, all of those different your generation doesn't seem to really matter. I do think maybe the older generations have a little bit more wisdom, God willing, that you do see that. And so you see the more comfortable aspect of it. People have grown into themselves and accepted themselves, but it's still a universal experience. And that's been one of the most, for me, actually having these conversations in this format to see, whoa, like it really doesn't matter where you're born or where you come from. Your experience is universal to that of your rising sign. And that's impressive. Whoever designed this, wow. I give it up. It's an impressive design to see that as new members come in and you get to see the layers of it unfold and get richer. And that's obviously one of my great hopes is that we want more people in these groups. That's why you're
Totally.
here. I can't
Yeah.
explain it. I'm telling you people, every time we have these groups, people say it's changing their lives, but I can't convince people of that. So that's why you're here. And what might you say? Let's say somebody is like on the fence about these groups. What would you say to them if they were like, okay, I'm interested, but I'm skeptical? What might you say to them to push them over into our groups?
I think being skeptical is great. And I think it's important because there's so many outlets out there where there is the woo and we love the woo, but you cannot lie about these synchronicities. You cannot lie, as we said, about these common denominators that in our rising sign group that we share. And even like you said, the older members, everything happens in cycles. So although they're not going through the same thing, they have gone through something. And so they can recognize these patterns and at least share some wisdom for those up and coming members who are now about to hit those transits or those cycles. And so I just think, yes, you have your circle and your community that can support you through life. However, the support that you're going to get from a rising sign group is by far, it's on a soul level.
Mhm.
And I could sell this all day long because it has changed my life. And what I think is the most important thing to walk away is it provides you awareness so that you can have a choice of, okay, we are all going through this. There is a lesson to be learned. What are we going to do about it?
Mm.
Okay. Because you are on the fence, but what are you going through in your life? And are you feeling empowered, or are you feeling like, why me? Why is this happening to me? But when you have the validation that there are other people also going through it at the same time or around the same time, you're just like, okay, I can see this for a totally different reason with a different perspective. And now I can have responsibility, the ability to respond, because we know with every sign, there is a high octave, there is a low octave. And am I going to take the high octave or the low one? Because I've been operating a lot of my life at the low octave. And now that I have this awareness as, okay, this is empowering. Now I can do something about it. Now I see this transit or this cycle as a challenge that I can rise above, that I can meet it and feel like I am having an evolution of the soul. And I want that for all of my rising sign members. So if you are on the fence, by all means, come on in, because the minute you talk to your rising sign group, it's going to click, a light bulb is going to come on, and you're going to feel at home. I trust and believe you will feel at home.
Yeah, that level of acceptance too, because I think that's exactly it. I think before these groups, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, I did feel like what I went through in life was an isolation, and there becomes a natural is me. Like, why do I have to deal with that? And why is this the challenge? And look at them, they don't have that challenge. And then you go into this group and you're like, oh wait, we all have this challenge. Whoa. I can accept myself now. I can accept the challenge, and I can accept that I can work with it or not work with it. However, but at least I now know that I'm not the only one who's challenged in this way, or a few of the transits we're all going through right now. It's just so nice to know that there are others having this specific challenge right now, because otherwise it feels like sometimes punishment. Like, why am I getting punished? We're all getting punished right now. And it's so we're not apparently getting punished. We're actually meant to work through this for this reason right now, and it will pass.
Right. And yeah, it does feel like punishment sometimes, but like with this perspective, then especially the bigger, slower moving transits, it actually gets me excited of, okay, if this big challenge or this big chapter moment is supposed to happen, what's next? What is coming down the line? Because it's just, then I get excited of like, all right, I can do this. We can do this. So yeah.
That sheer encouragement that comes from seeing someone having the same challenge, because it is difficult sometimes when someone in your life is crushing in an area, and you're like, when you're just being crushed and you're like, oh my gosh. And it's hard to want to go to that person for support, just naturally, because there can't be a level of empathy, even if they are like the best counselor, the best support system. There's still this little, but you're crushing right now in this area, so how could you possibly understand what this is? But to know that when you enter your group, certain areas you're being crushed in, and not all the time or whatever, but there's certain areas where we'll be crushing according to the astrology and the transformation that comes through the crush. And to be able to know, okay, I can talk to you about this. I can share this with you. And I know that it's going to be held in acceptance and empathy at the highest octave that is possible in the human emotion, because there's a mirror. I see you. I see you. I get you. And that level of just like incredible support, you just can't get outside of these groups, or like on any level, I don't think, really.
And when you see your other members crushing it despite a hard transit or a hard cycle, it's actually encouraging of, okay, I see them doing it. I can too.
I can do that. Totally.
Yeah, I can do that too.
Yes.
And I will also say that, and you've encouraged this, that through your community and through the platforms that we're using for other rising signs to talk to each other, what I think has also been helpful is hearing those other rising signs who have just gone through a first house transit to know and to give the validation of, this is what happened, or these are the overall themes of what I had to look at and what I had to work through. It makes those bigger, scary transits not as scary,
Yes.
because it's okay. I can do that. I'm actually looking forward to it,
Mhm.
because what's on the other side of that? And just to know of that they just went through it and they still survived, they're still
Yes.
alive, all is well, and they're better for it.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Love
Oh,
it.
totally. I'm very fortunate that I get to hang out in all the groups. It's a real
Hmm.
perk, which will become an opportunity soon for others. Stay tuned. But like when I'm talking to the Taurus risings and the Cancer risings, because I'm watching the Taurus risings who are going through, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And it is very learned. I learn a lot of just really useful observations where, okay, I'm seeing how this is playing out for y'all. Like one trans in particular that we're going to come into in 26. I've been
Hmm.
very like, and
Hmm.
I've seen it with the group in front of us. And I'm like, okay, I see the cautionary tale and you're fine and you're fine. You're fine.
Hmm.
And then the group behind us, the cancers, I love talking to them because I'm like, y'all, we're going through this right now. I know it looks
Yeah.
scary, but we're fine too, you know? Yeah, I
And
love that.
how wonderful that we can share words of encouragement to the rising signs behind us. And
Totally.
I love that. So we're not just building community within our own rising sign, but then across. Yeah.
Totally. And we've had our mutable groups, which have been really
Y-
fun, right? Those have been good
Yes.
groups, right?
Yes. I actually thought I would love the modality groups more, but I actually like the element groups more,
Yeah.
because
Right.
you something clicked for me in those meetings, because just the flavors of the elements within the signs, within the
Mm,
houses, that really just gave me some perspective of okay, and what we have to learn from each other. Yeah, I really liked those meetings as well.
I'm literally writing a note because of that. Thanks for pointing that out because that's been fun. Having the
Hmm.
air risings together and the mutables and yeah, because there's also another layer of camaraderie that happens as you bring the groups together in these different dynamic ways. It's really interesting because so yes, we're all mutable and we have a relationship, but I also can't fully relate with Earth rising, let's say Virgo, nearly as much in a way as I can to the Aquarius risings, but there's ways about them I can't.
Yeah.
It's just a fascinating dynamic to learn those different layers of these groups. Okay, so this has been like an incredible conversation. What last kind of like minutes or last minute thoughts, feelings, contributions would you like to make to just speak to these groups and just this experience as a whole?
Last minute thoughts. So first off, I just want to thank Eugenia for even creating this offering, for creating this platform, for creating this space for us to actually connect. Because I feel, especially through COVID times, and we're still not right in the world right now. And we're going to be going through some heavy transits coming up in the next couple of years. So I just want to thank you for actually creating this space, because, as I said, it has been a godsend. It has alleviated a lot of anxiety in terms of where we are in the world, but also where we are in our one-on-one interactions and in our daily lives. So it's been really validating, supportive, and just a joy to be a part of. I always look forward to our meetings and just seeing our messages in between meetings and just amongst each other. I will have these connections for life, regardless of where we find ourselves in the world 20 years down the road. I truly feel like I will have these connections
Mhm.
for life. And so I just want to say thank you. I just want to say, if you are not in the rising signs, get in them now, join. You won't regret it. You won't feel alone, and you will have found your tribe, to be cliche, but
Mhm.
they are your tribe. They are your soul sisters and brothers, and they are there to support you every step of the way. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that. That's very lovely of you to say. And I receive that. And thank you for that gratitude. It's been the greatest experience of my professional career world experiences these groups. And it's an interesting thing going from working one-on-one mostly my entire career and doing one-on-one work with people, which is still absolutely incredible. But at the same time, the power of healing, the potential for healing within a group setting is another level. And maybe that's the age of Aquarius, maybe because I am an Aquarius. I have no idea exactly.
Mm.
Maybe because the ruler of my 11th, this is my 10th, all those different layers. But I am really profoundly moved by the impact of healing that is possible within a group setting versus just one-on-one. I think a lot can get done one-on-one in astrology consultations, and a lot of like major specifics to who you are as an individual, but to have that reflection, I think is, yeah, just like one of the most incredible healing paths we can have.
Absolutely. You said it before, we're mirrors to each other. And when you
Mhm.
see multiple heads nod when you're bearing
Yeah.
your soul and sharing in a very safe
Wow.
space, even just the nonverbal cues of a head nod is enough.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I just got goosebumps. It's
Yep.
exactly. I think exactly. I think above all else, it's when the heads nod. You're like, and you're talking like, yes, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously goosebumps. Like that's the one where you're like, whoa, you get me. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
incredible. I love that. Katie, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for being here with me today to discuss this. I'm very grateful that you had the courage and the vulnerability come on this podcast with me to discuss this. So thank you for everything. And thank you for being such an awesome member in these groups too. It's just been a
Oh, thank
delight.
you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you for having me. Really
sure
enjoyed it.
thing. All right, Katie. And I will see you in our groups coming up, and hopefully I'll see all of you as well. So see you then.